go on to the next piece of business for the evening to do so. That includes our guests. But for those who like to process together in community, we're going to do our warm and lingering goodbyes. So you'll have some time to reflect on what the Congresswoman says and share your thoughts with the group. So a word about UUSJ. For nearly 25 years at UUSJ, at Unitarian Universalist for Social Justice, we've been building our strength for this circumstance, even if we did not know this fight was coming during our lifetimes. As a UU faith movement, we have been grappling with injustice and pejorative politics for quite a while. Our history of defying oppression goes back even further than our current movement, if we're looking at the separate legacies of Unitarian and our Unitarian and Universalist ancestors. And it is my belief that in the next 4 years, we're going to face many challenges. The stream of outsized, bigger-than-life assertions will continue. The mendacious and misleading statements will carry on. The onslaught of pernicious policy proposals will gather momentum. The unofficial oaths of fealty above and beyond the Constitution will abound, and the vitriol will spew. In my personal opinion, it appears that the autocrats have taken the bully pulpit and the oligarchs have moved into the front offices of our government. Plutocracy and cronyism may, in fact, rule the day. And I fear that it is a new dawn for Christian nationalism in America, with their eyes set on a Christian theocracy. I worry that the root harms will metastasize and spread. But having said that, the question is whether or not we will allow our nation to continue a flirtation with fascism, whether or not we will sit idly by and watch our democracy being dismantled and our liberties shorn away, whether or not we will watch as the tipping point is reached and breached. And I say we will not. We know how to do hard things as UUs. We are not afraid to meet the challenges as UUs. We will do so in somber optimism for our faith, our freedoms, our families, and our futures. And UUSJ continues to be a home for those who want to advocate, agitate, and witness to interrupt the interlocking injustices of federal policy violence. Our faith is about the liberty and freedom to cherish interdependence, pluralism, justice, transformation, generosity, and equity. Love remains our guiding principle and faith value. And we remind you and our other people that we are in it for the long haul, not the loophole. That our faith tradition teaches the power of redemption and transformation. And as Martin Luther King and Reverend Theodore Parker suggested, the arc of transformation that we inhabit is for justice. And that arc is long. It is long enough to bear the weight of this impending season of travesty, tragedy, and injustice. So we believe advocacy, witness, and education are the cornerstones of defiance. We know action is the antidote for despair. We maintain that community and fellowship are the fiber of resilience. And we trust that joy is the taproot of liberty. And when it is all over, we will be sure that we did everything possible within our power to mitigate and stop the worst outcomes, the deadliest damage, and the most heinous harms. So please follow the links in the chat that we will offer and sign up to help us do that work. And if that work sounds meaningful to you, please donate to UUSJ. Your financial support will help fund our defiance. And also know that your gifts tonight will help fund the resilience of the communities impacted by the California wildfires, because we will indeed split our plate with the folks suffering from those fires through the UUA's Disaster Relief Fund. So with that, I'm going to introduce the Reverend Joseph Santos Lyons, who will offer tonight's chalice lighting and homily, as well as our closing prayer and charge for social justice. Paulette, would you please spotlight Reverend Joseph as I introduce him? Well, while Paulette's doing that, Reverend Joseph was raised in the Unitarian Universalist communities in Western North America on traditional Molaya and Chinook lands, and they currently serve as Drum's community minister. They are also a chief of staff for the representative Con Pham in the Oregon State Legislature. They are a co-parent of 3 young adults based in Antipolo City, Philippines, with the Center for Organizing, Renewal, and Leadership. After Harvard Divinity School and ordination, Reverend Joseph co-led power building and culture shifting grassroots groups in Oregon and Washington with communities of color focused on youth and environmental justice. They are the former UUA director of campus ministry and field organizing, and co-founded the Community Ministers Retreat, now in its 15th year in the Pacific Northwest. Reverend Joseph is an ordained Unitarian Universalist minister, serving transnational communities of color and organizing a new collective retreat in Metro Manila, primarily based in Southeast Asia. And their research focus is on the spiritual and anthropology, of religious liberals in the Philippines. And with that, I'm going to spend a moment looking for Reverend Joseph.
Thank you, Pablo. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, there we go. Thank
Wonderful. Just want to take a moment as we settle in just to invite folks, if you'd like to stretch a little bit and release, and maybe wave also a little bit and settle in. This is definitely a really intense time, and it's good to be together. But also ask you to join me in a collective breath, to take a moment to breathe in and breathe out. Welcome to this collective space. And if it's possible, it'd be great to have whoever's doing tech to spotlight my other picture. Yeah, not this one, but the other one. The one that's not my profile picture, but the one that's my live face. I don't know who's doing the digital. And I appreciate being invited by UUs for Social Justice to offer a few minutes of a chalice lighting and a homily to ground us. And really kind of tickled and excited to be able to be in space again with Congresswoman Judy, who I've looked up to for a long time. As we gather tonight, I want to start by asking you to center yourselves in the image of a spiral, a shape that has guided humanity for centuries, appearing in shells, galaxies, and ancient carvings. The spiral teaches us that life is not a straight line, but a journey of circling inward and outward, deepening and expanding with every turn. It reminds us, the spiral, that progress is rarely easy or linear, especially in moments like these when the world feels so uncertain. Fear and backlash loom large, and the next step, the next movement, can feel impossibly hard. The spiral calls us back to our core, reminding us of our values, beliefs, and relationships. It is in this sacred center that we find the clarity to move forward. Our Unitarian Universalist faith lifts up the principles of solidarity and siding with love as guides for these times. These are not abstract ideals, they are practices that root us in relationships and invite us to step forward with courage and purpose. Courage and purpose. Our faith reminds us that we are not alone. Each act of courage, each decision to move forward becomes part of the spiral's pattern, woven together by the communities and the places that sustain us. I think of when I first met Congresswoman Judy through my work with the Asian Pacific American Network of Oregon in the Pacific Northwest. Congresswoman Chu was leading the Tri-Caucus, uniting Asian, Latino, Black lawmakers to amplify voices that were fighting for dignity and the resources to thrive. Watching her move with clarity and resolve, I had a model of what it means to build bridges, to create alliances across difference, and to hold a vision of justice. And that vision isn't easy. It requires that we keep showing up, even when fear and criticism surround us. It requires courage, not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. And our courage grows in community, in the quiet daily acts of connection that deepen trust and build solidarity. We are facing a terrible moment of backlash fueled by xenophobia, right-wing forces targeting our communities and rolling back progress. Yet this is also a moment where we as Unitarian Universalists must meet the challenge. And yes, we can. Si se puede. Our faith calls us to side with love, to risk boldly, to embody justice, dignity, and mutual care. So this evening together, as we reflect on the spiral of each of our journeys, let us check our capacity for risk. Let us ask ourselves, what is the next part of my spiral? Where can I find courage? Who can I turn to for support? Because the truth is, we are in this together. As we light this chalice, let it be a symbol of our shared courage and solidarity. Let it remind us of the relationships that sustain us and the values that guide us. Together, step by step, piece by piece, movement by movement, we can move toward this beloved community we long to create. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Whoa. Okay. So with that, we appreciate you, Reverend Joseph. Thank you so much for giving us some grounding and lighting our chalice. And I want to take a moment and just offer a word about why Congresswoman Chu's message matters to us UUs. The crisis of conscience in the United States is, in my opinion, official. We've received a suspect national emergency at our southern border being declared. A dubious national energy emergency has also been proclaimed, and it's been paired with a drill baby drill mantra. We've received official admonishment that there are only two genders, male and female. And then came the onslaught of challenges to our Constitution and norms. And the torrent of policy has been revealed, in fact, as executive orders and the corresponding news. I'm not sure that you're aware, but today in Atlanta, ICE agents attempted to serve arrest warrants at a church. And it's the first instance that we know of. Paulette, can you handle that? What's going on? Who is that?
It says Mike McMiniman's screen is sharing.
Yeah, I'm trying to work that. Okay. Apologies. That's the first time it's happened to you, USJ. So in any case, I think we're all pleased to hear from Congresswoman Chu this evening. And so let me introduce her. Judy Chu was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in July 2009. She represents the 28th Congressional District, which includes Pasadena and the San Gabriel Valley of Southern California. Representative Chu currently serves on the powerful House Ways and Means Committee, which has jurisdiction over legislation pertaining to taxes, revenues, Social Security, and Medicare. In that committee, Representative Chu is a member of the subcommittee on health, worker, and family support and oversight, giving her oversight of healthcare reform and crucial safety net programs. She also serves on the House Small Business Committee, which has oversight of the Small Business Administration. In 2011, Representative Chu was elected chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, which Reverend Joseph mentioned. And that caucus advocates for the needs and concerns of the Asian American and Pacific Islander community across the nation. And she helps lead the Tri-Caucus, a joint effort with the Congressional Black Caucus and the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. Representative Chu also co-founded and co-chairs the Congressional Creative Rights Caucus, which advocates for the copyright protections of those in the creative industries, such as music, film, and the visual arts, which I would expect from somebody near Hollywood. And she also serves in leadership of the House Democratic Caucus as a member of the Steering and Policy Committee. And some of Representative Chu's proudest accomplishments in Congress include introducing and passing a congressional resolution of regret for the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, working with President Obama to declare the San Gabriel Mountains a national monument, requiring the Department of Defense to address military hazing, helping entrepreneurs by establishing 2 new small business development centers in the San Gabriel Valley, and helping small businesses refinance old, expensive real estate loans by reviving the Small Business Administration's 504 loan refinance program. And I'll just add here, I know plenty of small business owners, and I know those are important things. Representative Chu was first elected to the Board of Education for Garvey School District in 1985. And from there, she was elected to the Monterey Park City Council, where she served as mayor 3 times. And then she was elected to the State Assembly and then California's elected tax board, known as the State Board of Equalization. And in 2029, she became a well-known name to most of us UUs when she became the first Chinese American woman elected to Congress in history. So Representative Chu lives with her husband, Michael Eng, in the city of Monterey Park, where they have been residents for over 30 years. And yes, Judy Chu is one of our own. She is one of the few Unitarian Universalists serving in Congress. And so I give you Congresswoman Judy Chu.
Well, thank you, Pablo, for that very kind introduction, and to the Unitarian Universalist for Social Justice for inviting me to speak with you all today. I want to thank you especially for making today's event a fundraiser to benefit those impacted by the fires in California, and for your generosity in a time when so many people are in need. As Pablo mentioned, I represent California's 28th Congressional District, which includes the cities of Pasadena and Altadena, which have been completely devastated by the Eaton fire earlier this month. This devastating fire destroyed over 9,500 structures, left 20,000 people homeless, and took at least 17 lives as it tore through Altadena and northern Pasadena. First responders and homeowners are still sorting through the rubble and learning what is left and can be rebuilt. But I know that we have a long road ahead of us. And that road to recovery absolutely must include support from the federal government. And in fact, I have been in Washington, D.C. fighting to ensure that Congress pass a disaster assistance package for our area. I think this will be one of the worst disasters in our nation's history. And this disaster aid must come with no strings attached and no conditions, just as we've done for every other disaster aid package in our nation's history. In fact, we did it just this past December for the victims of Hurricanes Milton and Helene from Georgia, the Carolinas, and Tennessee. Now, I know that when I was casting my vote, I didn't think about whether the victims of these hurricanes were Democrats or Republicans. I thought about how these were families who lost everything and needed help. That's why on Friday, I went to the Pacific Palisades on the west side of Los Angeles, where the other fire is. And I had issued a letter for President Trump to come and see the devastation for himself. He actually did come. And in previous statements, he was saying that he was threatening to withhold federal aid from these victims. So I knew that I had to meet with him so I could tell him not to forget Altadena and Pasadena and to make sure he knows that we need his partnership to recover from this disaster. Wildfires have no political affiliation. They know no political party. As Americans, we have each other's backs during these times of immense need. And we have to do the same for the victims of these fires. I tell you, I won't rest until we get them all the federal support they need and deserve with no strings attached. I was glad that in the conversation with the president, he actually promised to be with the victims of the fire 100%. And I plan to hold him to this promise because supporting disaster victims means not attaching extraneous strings. Like in previous statements, he said he would not do it unless we passed a voter ID law first, or said that first, in order to give that aid, Congress has to raise the debt ceiling in order to finance the GOP's tax giveaway to billionaires. We know that despite the fact that Donald Trump ran for office by promising to bring the cost of living down for ordinary Americans, the first thing on the agenda is for the new Republican majority in Congress to pass a giant tax bill filled with giveaways to billionaires like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. And we know that that is his top priority, not necessarily disaster aid, but we can see what's going on because in 2017, they passed this GOP tax scam, which served only as a giveaway to the mega rich, paid for on the backs of everyday Americans. Now, as a member of the Powerful Ways and Means Committee, which oversees tax policy, I did have a front row seat to Republicans' efforts the first time this happened, and I'm committed to fighting this once again. When I say that this law will be paid for in the backs of working people, what I mean is that in order to satisfy their base, Republicans are going to gut critical programs that help Americans afford health care, protect our environment, and help hungry people afford food. The latest proposal floating around Washington, D.C. shows that House Republicans are looking to cut at least $2 trillion, that's trillion with a T, by cutting Medicaid, the federal program designed to help low-income Americans afford their health care. The current proposal would institute something called a per capita cap on Medicaid spending, meaning each state would receive a lump sum of money to cover all of their health care costs for that year. So if costs rise, it's on the state to make up the difference, which means that the states would most likely make drastic cuts. by paying doctors less or offering less coverage for things like childbirth or diabetes. When this was last proposed in the 2017 effort to repeal the Affordable Care Act, the Congressional Budget Office, which is the nonpartisan entity tasked with estimating the impact of federal laws, estimated that about half of Americans currently on Medicaid will become uninsured. That is millions of Americans without health insurance overnight. Republicans have also proposed adding so-called work requirements to Medicaid. This was a tactic used in the last Trump administration, ostensibly to incentivize people who receive health care through the federal government to work in order to receive benefits. But in reality, these measures do not help people get jobs. Instead, they primarily serve as health care barriers, trying to stop people from getting it. But you don't need to take my word for it. Studies conducted on states that instituted work requirements under the Trump administration found that there was no statistical increase in the number of beneficiaries working. And in some cases, it actually led to a decrease in employment, and households became less stable. The only thing work requirements were effective in doing is pushing people off Medicaid in order to save money. Since Republicans in Congress would rather spend money on giving tax breaks to billionaires, this was, of course, the goal. The proposals on how to pay for all these tax breaks come from all areas of federal spending. There's a proposal to roll back tailpipe rules and fuel efficiency benchmarks for cars and light trucks. Instead, the next tax scam would give tax breaks to big oil companies and car manufacturers while our air becomes harder and harder to breathe. There's proposals for cuts to SNAP, formerly known as food stamps, which helps hungry families put food on the table. There's proposed cuts to retirement benefits for federal employees who've given their lives to public service, and proposed cuts to student loan programs that help young people afford an education, and proposals for increases in fees for those seeking asylum in the United States. In reality, we are in the greatest era of wealth inequality in this country since the Gilded Age. Prices are rising faster than wages, and Donald Trump and congressional Republican solution is to go all in on tax breaks for corporations and the wealthiest in our country. They would get a windfall tax break, and who pays for it? The middle class. So who wins? Corporations, billionaires, millionaires, and the Trump family. Who loses? Women, families, seniors, teachers, students. The last time we faced this fight, the American people saw right through the facade. Now things are different and people are disillusioned. But we cannot turn away from what is happening right in front of our eyes, which is one of the largest transfers of wealth from working people to the billionaire class in our history. Well, unfortunately, one of the most brutal realities of the second Trump administration is already on us, and that is in the area of immigration. And it's a focus on mass deportations and demonizing immigrants in this country. While the majority of immigrants said that the economy was their number one concern on Election Day, Donald Trump is using his victory as a mandate to enact the most draconian anti-immigrant policies of our lifetime. On day one, we saw the president unleash a slew of executive orders aimed at intimidating, arresting, deporting, and dehumanizing immigrants in this country. Perhaps the most egregious examples of this is the executive order to end birthright citizenship in this country. This 14th Amendment, though, is crystal clear. Anyone who is born in this country is a citizen of this country. And in fact, immediately, 22 states, including California, sued to stop this executive order from going into place. And a federal judge appointed by Ronald Reagan called this a blatantly unconstitutional order. To return this country to a time when an entire class of people born in this country are not considered American is not just backward, it's horrifying. But even though the executive order has been paused, the threat is nowhere near from over. Trump ran on a platform of mass deportation, one that he clearly intends to follow through on. He rescinded a federal policy that prevented ICE from carrying out deportations in places such as hospitals, schools, and churches. And within hours of his inauguration, there were already ICE raids being carried out in blue states with the express purpose of instilling fear. Since Donald Trump's inauguration, ICE has conducted a nationwide operation that resulted in over 538 arrests across the United States. I've been working with immigration groups and my colleagues in the Congressional Progressive Caucus to help disseminate important Know Your Rights fact sheets so that if you or anyone you know is stopped by ICE, you know what your rights are. The point of these mass ICE raids is fear, and the best weapon we can arm ourselves with is our knowledge of our rights and how to protect ourselves and our neighbors. So I encourage all of you who are worried about these effects and efforts to share. I hope that you can, in fact, share these Know Your Right fact sheets with your communities. You never know the difference that you could make in someone's life with it. I also want to talk about some of the things the Trump administration will likely bring back, like the Muslim ban. I will never forget that day in January 2017 when the Muslim ban was first announced. I was on my way to speak at an event when I received a frantic call letting me know that about 50 Muslims who held green cards and were legitimate entries were being detained at Los Angeles International Airport for hours and with no end in sight. At that moment, I decided to drop everything I could and help in any way I could. I rushed over to LAX to advocate for these people. And once I arrived, I found that indeed there were scores of people with similar stories. People with a legal right to be here, kept for hours without food and blocked from receiving legal advice from an attorney. It was outrageous. And when I pressed the Customs and Border Protection for answers, they resisted and blocked me. I even got them on the phone only to have them hang up on me. I'd never been more disrespected as a member of Congress. It was clear for those of us on the ground that this policy was poorly conceived and hastily executed, and moreover, that it was motivated by prejudice and started causing pain as soon as it was signed. The original Muslim ban was partially blocked by the courts and eventually rescinded by President Biden. But now it is indeed in danger of coming back. And in fact, one of the executive orders the president signed on day one lays the groundwork for a second iteration of Muslim ban. It sets a 60-day window for top state justice, intelligence, and homeland security officials to identify countries whose vetting and screening processes are so deficient as to warrant a partial or full suspension on the admission of nationals from those countries. That is why we must make sure this cruelty does not happen again. And that is why Senator Chris Coons of Delaware and I originally introduced the No Ban Act in the spring of 2019. This bill amends the Immigration National Act to require that any future travel ban is based on credible facts and actual threats. The bill also requires the president to work in consultation with the Department of State and Homeland Security to provide evidence of why a ban is needed and to brief Congress within 48 hours of taking action. In other words, it requires policies to be based on facts and not fear. I was proud that this was the first pro-Muslim civil rights bill ever voted on positively in the House. And I'm going to reintroduce this bill in the coming weeks because we need policies like these more than ever. And while we do not have majorities in Congress right now, we cannot stop fighting against these injustices as they come up. The last topic I'd like to discuss with you all today is the ongoing assault on reproductive rights by the extreme right in this country. Since the Supreme Court's MAGA majority voted to overturn 50 years of precedent in the Dobbs decision, we've seen state after state enact abortion bans, ripping away bodily autonomy from millions of women in this country. Right now, 19 states have either partial or total bans on abortion. But since then, the American people have stood up and stood together. They rejected these attacks on our fundamental right to bodily autonomy to make decisions on our own bodies. Voters in state after state have resoundingly voted in favor of protecting abortion access and fighting back against anti-abortion initiatives from the extreme right wing. And in fact, in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Kentucky, Montana, and in my home state of California, voters showed us that they support abortion access. Even in 2024, when the election did not go the way we wanted it to, ballot initiatives supporting access to abortion passed in 7 of the 10 states where they were on the ballot. And one of those states was Florida, where access to abortion received well over 50% of the vote, but did not clear the higher threshold of 60% put in place by anti-abortion lawmakers to prevent the initiative from becoming law. What we need and what American women deserve is a national right to abortion care in every state and in every zip code. And that is why I am working with my congressional colleagues to reintroduce my bill, the Women's Health Protection Act, or WIPA. My bill will create a federal right to abortion access no matter what your zip code. It also ensures that states cannot erode that right by passing arbitrary and medically unnecessary bans that we know chip away at abortion access. My bill passed the House twice under Speaker Pelosi, but with Republicans in charge of the House, we will not be able to pass the bill. This I know. But I will be reintroducing WIPA this spring because I believe it's essential that we not only speak up against what we see happening when rights are taken away, but also show our vision to America of how they can be restored and protected. Some have asked me how to keep fighting in a moment like this when everything seems bleak. But I'll say this, change feels like it happens overnight, but it actually takes a very, very long time. I first introduced WIPA in 2013 when it did not have the support of the entire Democratic caucus. Now, it's our number 2 bill that we as Democrats consider as part of our policy platform. And unlike in 2017, when we were blindsided by the Trump presidency, we know how to respond and we know how to win. I will never forget the response to the attempts to repeal the Affordable Care Act. There were 70 of them. I know because I had to vote on all of them. The congressional switchboard was overwhelmed. Our offices were flooded with callers and mail asked to save the law. Protesters were in the hallways and in our districts demanding their health care be protected. And you know what? It worked. The repeal efforts were stopped, and while we were unable to stop the passage of the GOP tax scam, we were able to get the message out to the American people about who Donald Trump and the Republicans were really working for. And it was crystal clear that the answer was they were not working for working people. It was the wealthy elite. And so we defended the Affordable Care Act. Now, this time, we are actually in a better position because Republicans are operating with a razor-thin margin in the House. In fact, right now, it is just a 2-vote difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. It's 217 to 215. And that is why our attention and the pressure we put on elected officials matters so much. If we can persuade just a few Republicans who won their seats in a district won by Kamala Harris that are doing something like voting for the tax bill or draconian immigration bill, you know, it could really cost them in the next election. Then, if we get their support, we can stop these efforts in their tracks. We did it last time with the ACA, and that was with a much, much larger Republican majority in the House. So we've done it before, and we believe we can do it again. I look forward to taking your questions and discussing more about where we go from here and how we can help each other over the next 2 years.
Thank you so much, Representative Chu. So I'm gonna add myself to the spotlight. And I'm going to invite people to raise their electronic hands and ask a question, cogent, succinct. The Congresswoman has another event coming up shortly, so we want to just ask those questions. And as you're gathering your thoughts, I'll ask the big one that keeps on coming up in the chat to me privately. What else should we be doing as Unitarian Universalists, as people who care about these issues? You know, we hear that there's lots of opportunity in the federal framework right now because of the vote margins you just mentioned. But how do we actually get the attention of the members of Congress so that we can apply this pressure that you're suggesting we need to apply?
Well, first, we really need to make sure the American people understand who is for them. See, they didn't quite understand this concept in the last election. This we know. Somehow, because Trump was so angry and so much a person who seemed like he would change things for the better, they listened to him. But our voices really need to be louder and they need to be clearer. And I think we need to make sure they understand that really so much of these efforts that Trump is making is for the billionaires. I mean, did you watch that inauguration with the three billionaires just right next to Trump? I mean, made it so clear that so much of this is to get the wealthy to be wealthier. And this is the reason why, even though our economy is actually doing relatively well, so many people feel like they can't afford things and that they have no hope for the future. And I think it is also because there is such an incredible wealth gap in this country that, you know, that we have to actually bring to light. I'm not sure if people really understand this. So I think we have to have clearer voices to speak to the people so that they understand this. And then we have to make sure that the people who are the activists will get out there to protest like we did with the ACA.
You're muted.
Karen, please ask your question. Karen, you are muted.
I sometimes feel that, and I mean no disrespect, that the Democrats in the House and in the Senate don't get out into the communities where Republicans are, where they can actually get the correct information or appear on places like Fox News. There's somehow we have to reach Republicans in small communities who don't hear this stuff. I sometimes feel like not you necessarily, but Democrats are speaking to the choir. We all agree and we can do our work. I called my senators today in Texas about a school bill. So there are lots of things that we can do, but what does the Democratic Party itself, how do they reach out into the community to get that information out there?
And they replace those breakers, those individual
Well,
things twice.
I totally agree with you. We have to get out there to all corners of America, including where there are rural Republicans. And we have to get out to areas where there are disaffected young people. And we have to really make them believe that we are the ones fighting for them. And so it means making sure that they hear what we're doing to make life affordable for them, because that's kind of like the number one message in that they are listening to right now. They want somebody to fight for them. And so we need to make sure that we are very clear on that. But I totally agree with you that we have to do that. Trump was somehow able to kind of get disaffected groups and identify them and then appeal to them. And we need to make sure that we get out there to everybody, every group that might feel that they are not a part of America.
Thank you, Representative Chu. I'm going to manage the questions. We need to be succinct. Please stick to short questions. Unitarian Universalist trustee Eliseo Santana, please ask your question.
Eliseo Santana. I'm in Clearwater, and I'm also a trustee of the UUSJ. I'm a Puerto Riqueño, and therefore born U.S. citizen. But obviously, I look Hispanic. I am Hispanic, and some of the immigration issues that been brought out, the enforcement has been affecting a lot of our fellow citizens that are not undocumented, people like myself. Is there a way of protecting that segment of the population by also protecting people like me that look Hispanic, that are being pointed in enforcing the laws that they are putting out there are not right? In other words, is there something that prevents them from asking me for proving who I am just because I'm Hispanic looking?
Well,
Thank you.
you identify a real issue for people that's going on right now. And with these sweeps, I am certain that U.S. citizens will be swept up as well. And we have to expose this. This is not right. I know that the American people seem to have said that immigration was their number one issue, but did they really think that people born in the U.S. should be subject to a terribly horrendous, traumatic, and unfair sweep as well? I don't think so. So we have to defend them in terms of making sure that they have their legal rights and that they have the proper legal representation. But we also have to really expose this. I tell you, when Trump was separating children from their families, that became such a big issue that Trump actually had to go back on that. So we need to expose these terrible things that we know will happen, but also make sure people get the proper legal representation.
Representative Chu, let me ask a question. Do you have any particular concerns for the Asian American Pacific Islander population as well? I mean, the issue that Eliseo puts his finger on, it would seem to apply to that community as well.
Well, thank you for asking about that, because there are 15,000 Southeast Asian refugees with final deportation orders. What happened is that when they came here as refugees, there was not a lot of resources for them. So they ended up in the poorest neighborhoods and just were on their own to survive.
I'll get hold of her. Hang on.
So many of them got into trouble, and they ended up serving time for something or another, but they actually served it. They came out and lived a good life. In fact, many of them rehabilitated themselves and have been upstanding citizens for like 40 years. But they have this final order of deportation on them. And this also goes against an arrangement that was made to support these refugees, since these refugees actually helped America, during the war. So anyway, I have a bill, and it's to stop these deportations from happening, and to make sure that they cannot act on these final orders of deportations. But I actually fear quite a bit about this one. They might be the first target for Trump because he's saying he's going after people with criminal records.
My heart goes out to that community. Linda, please ask your question.
Hi, I'm in Sarasota, Florida, and our congregation is trying to protect the transgender folks in our area because Florida is pretty bad. And I was wondering if there's anything going on in the Congress to help protect these people instead of trying to erase them.
We have numerous bills that we have introduced to protect transgender persons. So certainly we have done everything that we can on our side to make that happen. But as you know, we don't control the House or the Senate. So it is difficult to actually get anything passed into law. Nonetheless, we're using our bully pulpit, the speeches on the floor, the press conferences that we can do to talk about this as loudly as we can, because it is not right. Actually, I want to tell you, we have our first transgender person elected to Congress too.
Yes, Sarah McBride.
Sarah McBride. She's really a terrific member of Congress. And the Republicans are so nasty that they wanted to prevent her from being able to use a woman's restroom.
Where is that at? Are they still trying to do that?
So they relented to some extent because of all the protests that we had. And so yeah, they haven't enforced this.
That's good news. Thank you.
Yeah, and it shows when we resist, when we don't obey in advance, we can create the space for the things we need and want. We may not get everything, but we get more than if we just stay silent and say there's nothing that's possible. Jewel, please ask your question, and then we're gonna try and scoot through these, but it depends on you guys asking quick questions.
Okay, thank you, Congresswoman, for your time, and thank you, USJ, for holding the space. So, as we're all concerned about protections, my question is, at the end of Biden's administration, he affirmed that the Equal Rights Amendment is law, but he didn't instruct the archivist to formally add it to the Constitution. So, given the possibility that the court might reject this, can you talk for a moment about where we stand in that process and what we can do as the public to support its inclusion?
Well, I am a member of the ERA caucus, so yeah, we were pushing for it to be included by the archivist. So President Biden kind of went partially there, but didn't go the whole way, and we were very disappointed. But we are still hoping that we can get it through, and we'll just have to wait though for another president to be open to it. So we would have to wait for another Democratic president.
Thank you. Yeah.
Mary, and then Kathy, and then Bob.
Hello, Representative.
Thank you very much for being here and explaining things to us. I have a twofold question, brief, regarding the many thousands of people who are subject to losing their Medicaid benefits. Number one, I heard that it is in the crosshairs of the Trump administration to be eliminated or impacted as early as February 1st. So I'd like to find out if you know anything about that. And secondly, considering Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security, it's being targeted first. And I was wondering if it's because of the population that is receiving the benefits. If the administration was trying to take it away from, the seniors with Medicare and Social Security, it might get more pushback. From Medicaid, people having disabilities and low income, there would be less pushback. Your opinion, please.
So I was talking about the Republicans' number one focus, which is to pass what was the 2017 tax scam bill. They want to put in a version that is even more severe in terms of giving more breaks to billionaires. So, they in the last bill, they reduced the corporate tax rate from 35 to 21%. Corporations weren't even asking for that drastic of a tax break. But now President Trump wants to make it 15%. So how do they give these massive breaks to billionaires? Well, they can't cut defense in their view. Other areas are off limits. The one area where they have their target is on Medicaid. That's why I focused on that, because poor people, right? So what do they care? I do think Medicaid is a big target. I don't think it'd be in February, though, because I think that's too soon for them to be able to get this bill in place. But they are going at super speed to get this tax bill together using this process called reconciliation, which they like because the bill could pass with only a majority vote rather than face the 60 vote limit. In other words, a filibuster that would stop such a bill in the Senate. So yes, I think Medicaid is in serious trouble, but it would hurt so many people, and I hope they realize that actually half of Medicaid goes to seniors who are in nursing homes. It would really hurt seniors.
Hi, Congresswoman. Thank you so much. I was the next to speak. I'm Kathy Rye. I'm a registered professional engineer here in California. So I feel for you and your constituents down there in Southern California. All the best to you guys. Two things. One is for reproductive age women. There is universal choice now that Roe v. Wade is repealed. So if you have friends in Congress in reproductive restrictive states, it's pandiahealth.com, PANDIA, every day. So anyone anywhere in the world with internet and a mailbox can have whatever they need mailed to them. And with ACA, thank you for saving it, for $39 a year, they can talk to a doctor and then have whatever they need mailed to them. So that's the first one. And then second one, I attended a electrification for homes workshop yesterday, and the average family of 4 home takes about $32,000 to retrofit so that we can all decarbonize. But if you look at defense, you mentioned military defense spending is off the table for discussion. They're spending for a family of 4, over $74,000 a year per year. Okay. And then just as an engineer, so thank you for thinking like an engineer. I see you problem solving like one. This is my last point. I saw a study that shows that 10% of the military budget can clothe, house, educate, and feed everyone. And we are yet raising it 10% every year. That's disgusting to me. So my question to you is, will you sign on to be a member of the Defense Spending Reduction Caucus, please, and encourage your fellow Congress members to do that?
Well,
Thank you.
I will certainly take a look at that. there are a lot of caucuses in Congress, so I didn't even know such a caucus existed.
Yeah.
So,
It was just founded by Barbara Lee. She's in my district. I'm at here at Albany, California. She's in Oakland.
oh yeah. Well, of course, now she's running for mayor of Oakland, and she, but
So
no,
Latifa did say that she wanted to support it, but I don't see her name on it. I see only 5 names so far. 5.
yeah. Well, the defense spending is out of control, and there were reports that were generated by entities like the GAO, Government Accountability Office, very legitimate ways to cut defense spending, but it's a taboo for Republicans. They don't want to perceived as voting for anything that would make us less able to defend our country. As a result, there are so many unnecessary things that we spend money on in our defense budget. And that is certainly a place that is ripe for sensible cuts.
Okay, so the very last question will go to Bob Shields. I'm so sorry to the others, but we can always follow up. And then we will have Reverend Joseph close us out in prayer. Bob?
Congresswoman, thank you for your time tonight. You mentioned the reconciliation bill as a really important issue, and also the real narrow majority that the Republicans have in the House. What can we do to take down that reconciliation bill? Can you point us at some potential Republicans that we might be able to influence for some reason that, but at least, well, maybe if they can't take it down, at least remove some of these really insidious elements of it?
Well, there is a schism between Republicans because certain Republicans want to give huge tax breaks to billionaires who already have huge tax breaks, but that will cost trillions of dollars. And on the other end of the Republican spectrum are those Republicans who are deficit hawks. They don't want to spend any more money on anything. And so I think we should exploit that schism. I think it'll be hard for Republicans to negotiate amongst themselves on this particular issue. So I think that they will have to really talk a lot and come to some kind of unusual conclusion to actually cross this divide between the different people. But I think it's actually an opportunity for us to create divisions and see if there are Republicans who won't vote for it.
And with that, thank you so much, Representative Chu. We're going to ask, we appreciate you. We understand that you have to go. We've already held you 5 minutes over time. So thank you so much for giving us your time. And we're going to ask Reverend Joseph to close us out in prayer. Paulette, can you spotlight Reverend Joseph?
Pablo, I'm checking in to see if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you and see
You can. Wonderful. Well, friends, we're coming to the end of our evening. I just want to offer these closing words. Spirit of life, the breath that moves through all things. As we prepare to leave this sacred space, we call upon you to guide us onward, circling back to our center and moving outward once again. We are on the edge of change, carrying the weight of the experienced and duty of what is to come, and holding the fire of possibility deep within us. Grant us the courage, the kind that grows like a spiral, rooted in our values and expanding with each word and action. Courage to speak truth even when our voices shake. Courage to act boldly even when the path ahead feels uncertain. Courage to do and take the next action in our lifelong journey, grounded in community and place. Remind us that we do not move along this path alone. We are part of an interconnected web, woven with the threads of relationships, connected to the land and the stars, strengthened by the hands of ancestors and companions. As we extinguish this chalice, its flame does not fade. It transforms.